Now let me show you how to implement the ability to update data. So back in our template, just before rendering the post title, inside the list item, I'm going to add a button. So a button with two classes, btn and btn-default. And we can also make it small, so btn-sm. Let's call this update. Now here I want to handle the click event and bind this to update post method in our component. And as the argument here, I'm going to send the actual post object. Now back in our component. So here's the create post. After that, I'm going to implement update post. So update post takes a post object. And once again, we need to use the HTTP object to send an HTTP request to update the data. Now here we have two choices. We can either call this .http.put, or we can call the patch method. What is the difference? We use the patch method to update only a few properties in an object. So instead of sending the complete representation of that object to the server, we send only the properties that should be modified. It's easier to show you in code. So here, let's say each post has a property called isRead. When we click a post, we want to set that property to true to indicate that this post has been read. Here we can use the patch method like this. So patch, once again, the first argument is the URL. So this.url. And the second argument is the body of the request. So here we want to modify only one of the properties. So instead of sending the entire post object to the server, we send only the properties that should be modified. So JSON.stringify. Here we add an object with the properties that should be modified. So isRead, we set this to true. So this is how we use the patch method. Now, if you want to use the put method, let's duplicate this. Here we change this to put. Instead of sending this object here, we need to send the entire post object. So this is the difference. Now, which approach should you use? That is really dependent upon what you're building. For the starter, you need to check to see if your API supports both the patch and put methods. Usually, most people build APIs that respond to put requests. So patch is not widely supported. But if you have an API that supports both the patch and put methods, you may be better to use the patch method if you're modifying only a few properties, because with this, you don't have to send an entire object to the server. And with this, you may get a slight performance benefit. So here I'm going to use the patch method. And just like the other methods of the HTTP class, we need to subscribe. Here we get the response. And let's simply log it on the console. So response.json. Save, back to the browser. So when I click update, now look at the console, we got this error, 404 not found. Because when you use the patch or put methods, you need to reference a specific post. Look at the URL here. It's JSON placeholder.typicode.com/posts. So we're referencing the entire posts collection. Instead, we need to reference a specific post. So back here, we need to change this URL, append a slash, and then the ID of the post that we're patching. So post.id. Save, back to the browser. Once again, update, look in the console. So this fake API is returning the same object. Now look at the network tab. Here you can see the request to this endpoint, posts/1. All right, look at our request details. So this is the request URL. You can see the request method is patch, status is 200. Now if you scroll down the bottom, in the request payload, this is the object we're sending to the server. So we have a tiny object with only one property, isRead. If we use the put method, the entire post object would be here. Now in this particular application, it would make absolutely no difference because our post objects are pretty small. They have only 4 properties. But if you're working with large complex objects, you may prefer to use the patch method if you're modifying only a few properties. So that's all about updating data. Next, we're going to look at deleting data.